I have made a few videos about transgenderism because I find no one speaking about it with a level-headed, reasonable, and also secular manner. I'm sure there's people who share my thinking process, but I haven't found them. Maybe this KC guy. In this video, I want to help you understand how banning gender-affirming surgeries for children is a band-aid solution, and I really wish you didn't have to do that. Because think about it. If the medical sector was doing its job correctly in the first place, there would be no need to regulate anything. Science works in a certain way. The only scientific and humane way to touch a prepubescent child, give it hormones, later remove their breast, change their genitals, whatever they feel like they want. The only reasonable and humane way would be in extremely severe, torturous, suicidal cases where the child suffers for many years, suffers deeply with their gender perception, and this would still be experimental because the truth is that we do get a lot of hormones, we do change our identity through adolescence, we become a completely different human being. And if you're a child, ask a grown-up, you can also look at them, but you can ask them if they're a different person than they were before they go through adolescence. And if you're a teenager, hold tight. And if you are an adult, just remember, the difference between a child and an adult is bigger than the difference between a man and a woman, which is already very big. Think about that. We let the big natural change come first, and then if it doesn't solve the gender dysphoria problem, oops, maybe we should consider some elective surgery. It's very well documented and established that the first cases of medicalizing kids, pushing them to the society as a different gender, are from deeply unethical, perverted doctors. So if the medical industry did its job correctly, there wouldn't need to be any law. And I want to come clear and remind you that even if I say those things with the data we have today, I would of course support a future where we have the biomarkers, as we call it, we have the elements to do an accurate diagnosis of a child that he or she would suffer gender dysphoria through the adulthood after they go through adolescence. And for that person, it might indeed be better to start taking hormones and do surgeries earlier because the body maybe can adapt, maybe. But in order to have this data, we have to follow very carefully kids and teenagers with gender dysphoria without changing their bodies, because most of them do get comfortable with their bodies, and we have to see what is the difference between the majority of them who do get comfortable with their bodies, and most of them I think are homosexual afterwards. Doesn't matter. No medical issue there to be homosexual. But then the ones who have the untreatable, unreconcilable gender dysphoria may have some characteristics, behavioral or biochemical or neurobiological, who knows? We don't have the data yet. If we could do an MRI to a child and with a very high confidence determine that this child would suffer living with their sex, and they have to change, well, they cannot change sex, they have to change the social perception of their sex, which you call gender, fair enough, then obviously we can try to do something about that person who would suffer if we didn't. People are impatient, but science doesn't work like this. We live more than 80 years. What you think of yourself when you're 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, it's gonna change. So no, there shouldn't be laws to prevent giving puberty blockers and hormones and surgeries to kids and to teenagers, because this shouldn't be happening in the first place. It's a band-aid solution. And when in the future we may have this actually working way to detect which of the kids will not overcome gender dysphoria, then we will have a stupid law to prevent those kids from altering their bodies in an artificial way to help with their mental condition. And that's all. So why is that controversial? I think one of the reasons, putting aside all the big pharma and the billionaires and the influence groups and the population control conspiracies, which may be true to some extent, even with those aside, the reason that so many people go with it is, to my understanding, the affirmation mentality. This mindset that is much more prominent to women than to men, generally, that, you know what? If you want to do something, who am I to tell you how to live your life? Yes, live your truth. Be your authentic self, even if it means you take hormones to change your sex. Now, the fact that our educational institutions, from kindergarten to the end of high school and then in the social studies in the university, are overwhelmingly overrepresented by women, in the West at least. The fact that psychology, psychotherapy is also overrepresented by women. And the fact that more and more medicine, like traditional Western medicine, gets more and more females may be contributing to this mindset of avoiding confrontation, feeling that to guide and to tell someone, I know better than you what's best for you, because you're fucking 10, is toxic. If I am the father of a 10-year-old and I claim that I know better for my son what's best for him, that may be bad parenting. And why that may actually be bad parenting is because in some cases I am wrong. In some cases my 10-year-old son will really be better off with the thing he wants. But I would like to argue that in the vast majority of the cases, when a kid asks for something, think about it in the simplest way. Imagine that every time your kid asks for something, you provide that something. You fulfill that request. What percentage of the times you have to say no? So if they are wrong with the everyday things, they're definitely wrong with the big things. They have no idea how it is to have hormones flashing through your body, to have the growth sprout, to have a period, to have crushes on the other sex or on the same sex. These things hurt because they're weird and strange, and these things are also gonna cure them from their confusion, because when you have a big fat erection for someone, you know what's going on, and that's healthy. You need that dick, don't cut it off. May start raising later. Wait a second. So by the way, obviously I don't blame women as a gender or men. This is ridiculous to blame a gender for something, and we all do it. Men blame women, women blame men. Now it's a bit more socially acceptable to blame men. Well, obviously it's stupid both ways, but I do blame the behavior. And I say that women are more prone to misbehaving that way than men. Just like men are more prone to misbehaving in violent ways, okay? So back to the laws. Unfortunately, they may be useful now. We see them coming out trying to protect kids, not only kids, parents, people, everybody is protected from the delusional, corrupted psychological industry, medical industry, and educational systems, which do ruin people's lives, and they create delusional people. I see them every day. You are most probably one of them. If you're afraid to confront topics that you're deeply uncomfortable with, you're to some extent delusional. I am delusional too, okay? But I want to find out, what am I missing? Write me in the comments. How am I delusional? If I show you yours, will you show me mine?